everybody, it's a beautiful day in June here in the United Kingdom. We're still going through some phases of lockdown, although the restrictions have been eased a little bit. But today I'm going to try and see if I can get to the bottom of my A65 Spitfire with its starting problems. I've actually been through some of the components, such as cleaning the carburetors. I've installed an electronic ignition, which initially seemed to work. The bike started after I'd installed the electronic ignition, albeit with a very high revving problem that I had, which possibly down to the carb setup, or I'm thinking now it might have actually been one of the throttle cables that had got jammed open when I put the bike back together. But then since then, after I've sorted the throttles out and the sliders in the carbs, making sure that they're going to the bottom, I've been unable to get the bike to start again. So I'm going to go through the whole gambit of looking at every single part of how a bike starts to see if I can bottom it out. First of all, I've done this check sheet to go through each component. So what you need for an engine to run are these four elements, if you like. First, fuel mixed with air, which the carburetor does. I'm sorry if this sounds a bit teaching grandmother to suck eggs, but it's more for my mind as much as for anybody else. We need a spark and we need a compression. So the carburetor was the first thing I looked at. This particular bike should have been fitted with GP carburetors, but they're not on the bike, and they weren't on the bike when I bought it. They are very expensive to replace, and a lot of the guys with the Gold Stars nick them and the front wheel, which has the same brake on it. So my Spitfire doesn't have the correct front wheel. Not only are they not alloy rims, but it doesn't have the big R190 hub, and the carburetors are missing. Be that as it may, the carburetors have been swapped for these Wassel concentric type carburetors, which should be 32 bore, but these are 30 bores. For all regular running, that shouldn't make any difference, and it certainly wouldn't make any difference to the starting problem. Now I've checked it, these carburetors, they've been cleaned. I've checked the jets, cleaned them again, and checked for any leaks, so I'm pretty confident that I've covered everything I need to cover on the carburetors. As for the fuel, it was coming through the tank. The tank is a fiberglass one. Who knows what the condition inside is like. So to eliminate that problem, I've got myself one of these. It's a temporary fuel tank. I'm going to run it through brand new hoses and filters, just to make sure that there's no question about the fuel supply in terms of it being correct and clean. So I've bought that little component. That'll be used for all my other bikes actually. So the next part is the spark. So I'm going to go through the continuity on the bike, making sure that all the wires are there. I'm going to do a timing check. I've got my little BSA timing plug, which I've shown in another video, and just make sure that my timing is bang on. Spark plugs and leads, they've all been replaced, and I've got myself two new spark plugs. I did clean the other ones, and I was getting a fat spark and no start, but again, just trying to eliminate all the possibilities. So I've got brand new spark plugs, and I will gap them correctly if they're not already gapped correctly, and I will charge the battery up. And very finally, we've got the compression and valve clearance. So I'll do valve clearance first. I've got my trusty feeler gauges, and I'll show you how I set the tappets on this particular bike. And then finally, if all else fails, although I'm not going to start it till I've done everything, I got this compression tester. It's about £20 in the UK. What, about $25, something like that if you're in the US. I don't know how good it is. It's got mixed reviews, and the problem that I'm going to have with this particular type of tester is that these compression tests should really be done when the engine is hot rather than cold. But seeing as I can't get the bike started, I'm going to have to test it cold. One thing it should be able to tell me is whether one cylinder is down particularly badly compared to another. That might be something that has an impact. Once I've done all of that, then presumably if the bike doesn't start, I've got something else majorly wrong with it, and that might mean taking the engine down and see if I've got broken rings, although I suspect it's not that. To be honest, my gut feeling is it's the carburetors, those Wattle carburetors. I don't know. Some people swear by the Wattle carburetors. Some people think they're absolutely awful. They are a direct copy of the Amel concentric carburetor, and the parts are supposed to be directly interchangeable. And I believe these are called the Premier carburetors, concentrics, which means that the pilot jet is separate. And I think that's about all that's different to them. As you can see in the diagram. Again, I've got plenty of documentation to tell me how to set those carburetors in terms of how far the throttle stop should be out and the air screws and what have you. So I will do that as part of this check, and hopefully I should have a running bike at the end of it. This video could be quite long, so I will chop it up into 10 or 15 minute segments. I don't want to bore myself or you with it. So here we go, get the bike out and let's start going through my checklist. So I hope you enjoy it.